Welcome to Healthy Buzz, the podcast for women who are craving honest answers in a supported community. Hosted by Mandy LeBlanc, a certified nutrition therapy practitioner who believes your body isn't broken, but the narrative around women's health is. Each week, we're diving deep into holistic health topics, challenging the one-size-fits-all approach, and empowering you to trust your own informed intuition. Get ready to feel seen, supported, and seriously informed. This is Healthy Buzz, where collaboration meets unfiltered transparency in women's health. Hi, Healthy Buzz listeners. Today, I am joined by Mandy LeBlanc of Mandy LeBlanc Wellness. Mandy is a certified nutrition consultant, women's health coach, and EFT practitioner, and Mandy brings over 20 years of holistic wisdom to her work with women. She specializes in helping women from puberty through perimenopause heal from painful periods, hormone imbalances, and digestive issues without those harsh interventions. Mandy's gentle, empowering strategies will help you reconnect with your body's natural rhythms and find real, lasting relief. She is the creator of Empowered Girl, a fun and educational mom-tween menstrual cycle education program, the Midlife Alchemy, a program for women 35 plus that want to empower themselves with the tools they need to thrive through midlife and beyond. Mandy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandy.
So we today are going to talk a lot about educating tweens and teens about their menstrual cycle. So before anybody goes and decides to skip this episode because maybe they don't have teens or tweens, or maybe they don't have children at all, don't leave this one, because I think you're going to find a lot of value. You're going to be able to relate a lot to what Mandy and I are going to talk about when it comes to just understanding the menstrual cycle as a whole, because I feel like as women, we need to have all of the tools. And I find so many women I talk to in their 30s and 40s are like, I had no idea that is how the menstrual cycle worked. So you're going to get a lot of information in today's episode. So Mandy, what was your first period story like? What was kind of the driving factor behind you creating this program for moms and tweens?
Oh, yes. So yeah, I've had definitely my own journey with menstrual health since I was a teenager, actually. But first, going back to what you said, absolutely. If you do not have teens or tweens or don't have children at all, you will still get so much out of this episode, because I find a lot of the moms are older, the women who I'm working with who are in midlife have never been exposed to some of this information. So yeah, hang tight. But my journey started back shortly after I started my period. So I started my first menstrual cycle, my menarche, around at 11 years old. I was probably getting close to 12. So at the tail end of 11, started out pretty normal. Nothing really eventful. I wouldn't say it was a negative experience or a necessarily positive experience, but it was just there. I felt ready for it. I felt aware, but I didn't really know much about the cycle. Moving a couple of years later, my periods started to get really painful. So I was having pain to the point that I would be doubled over on the floor of the high school lobby in pain. I would be throwing up from the pain. I would have times that my period would just go missing for months and months. I didn't know at the time that, sometimes teens can have a few missing periods, but mine would go missing for a longer period of time, often. When it did come, again, it was really painful. So, of course, we didn't really know any other option but to go to the doctor and to see what they had to say. And of course, I was given the birth control pill from an early age. So I think I would have been about 14 or 15 when I was put on the birth control pill. And of course, knowing now, this doesn't really fix things at the root cause. It's just kind of masks the symptoms, gives you a fake period or a withdrawal bleed every month. So I decided through nutrition school, I was learning a lot about what some of the nutrients that the birth control pill will deplete, some of the different things it can do in the body. And at that point, I felt like I wanted to come off of it. So at that point, I guess I probably was on the pill for about 9 years at that point. And I came off the pill and my period was MIA. It was gone it was well over a year until I got my period back. Luckily, during that time, I had been doing a lot of work, having gone through nutrition school and having worked with quite a few practitioners myself during that time to really get to the root of what was going on, because I was having other issues as well, digestive issues and skin issues, those types of things come up. So working to get to the root cause of everything. Luckily, when my period finally did come back, I had done a lot of the healing work and I have a really great relationship with my period now. No symptoms, happy ending to the story in some ways, even though I am in perimenopause now and it's starting to get a little bit more sporadic. I will miss my cycle when it goes because I have a great relationship with it now. That's, I guess, the gist of my period story and why I know that there's a better way for girls to start out their journey and to be really aware of what's going on with their cycles so that they have other answers. I was always really interested in holistic methods, even as a young girl. And I would have tried probably lots of different things if I had been given the information, but I just wasn't given the option.
Yes, I can so relate to that. And people, if you want to hear my story with birth control and my first period, you can go back to episode 1 to listen to how Mandy and I had a very similar kind of scenario that involved. And I find a lot of teens have something very similar. So in like what ways is the education that we receive, like sex ed? I mean, how is that like really failing girls and women as we progress through in learning about our menstrual cycle?
I feel like it's doing girls and women such a disservice. So I do have a teenage daughter now, so I'm kind of in the thick of that. She's kind of gone past that stage now about learning about periods in school, but we thought it was quite funny when she was going through actually because, well, for one thing, it's very basic what they learn. It's really just the nuts and bolts. It's the mechanics of what's happening when they get their period. Basically, it's nothing about the changes that happen throughout the cycle. Often they don't even learn about things like cervical mucus or discharge, if you're not familiar with cervical mucus, and how that can show up differently throughout the cycle and what that is a signal of. I don't know about you, Brandy, but when I was young, I thought that every month when that showed up, I had something wrong with me. I had an infection or something. We just didn't learn about that. And they don't learn about the importance of ovulation and how that really is protective to women's health in so many ways. They really learn that if they do go on oral contraceptives, yeah, they learn about the black box side effects, but they don't learn about how that really affects the body in different ways, what nutrients it can deplete, what the repercussions are of not ovulating for several years, because most girls are on it for like sometimes women are on it from the time they're a teen right until they go through menopause, and that can have a lot of repercussions on the body. So they really learn, just like I said, the basic mechanics of menstruation, and they don't really learn to be empowered in how their body changes throughout the menstrual cycle and how their emotions can change their energy levels and how they can lean into the different superpowers. I like to call them superpowers that happen throughout the different phases of the cycle. I know I still talk to women who don't have a clue about that there are different phases of their cycles.
Could you give us a real brief overview of like the phases of the menstrual cycle? Because maybe our listeners also, maybe this might be the first time that they're hearing about it, that what, there are phases? I didn't know there were phases. I just thought that the week before my period, I hated everybody.
Well, yeah, absolutely. There are, a lot of women just think there's the period and then there's the not period time. So there are 4 distinct phases of the menstrual cycle. It starts really with the actual period. So your bleed week, that's the first phase. That's the menstrual phase. So typically for most women, that's a 5 to 7 day phase. And that's when your hormones are at their lowest point. So this is why you might feel a little bit more tired during your period. You might want to rest a bit more. As you move out of that and the hormones start to build up, you're starting to get that next egg ready for release. That is the follicular phase. So this lasts from the end of your period right up until you ovulate again. So usually ovulation is mid-cycle. There are different ways to track this. It's not necessarily day 14 like your app might tell you, but it does happen usually typically around mid-cycle as long as everything's going well. And then, of course, there's the ovulation phase, which is really just a couple day window when the egg is actually released. This is typically when most women are going to feel their most energetic, their most magnetic. Hormones are kind of the estrogen's at its highest at that point. So you're going to just feel really more energized, more outgoing typically. And then after ovulation, after that egg is released, Your body's going to start to produce more progesterone during this time. And that's kind of more that calming hormone. And you're going to move into the next phase, which is the luteal phase. So that's leading up from the time you ovulate, leading up till your next period. And that luteal phase can kind of start at a bit of a hormone high from your ovulation time. And then it'll start to decrease into more of that, we like to call it the PMS time, or that maybe that week before the period where your hormones are going to decline and you're going to start to feel a little bit more inward, I guess is the way I like to call it. I also like to call it the inner fall season. So when we start to go a little bit more inward, we want to just be a bit more reflective and maybe start to take care of ourselves a little bit more again during this time because our energies are starting to dip a bit.
Oh, yes. That is such a great reminder of like the different shifts that are happening. The other day I had a client session and like I pop on, she's like, wow, you look really great today. I'm like, I'm ovulating. Today is ovulation day. So I was feeling real good right before I got sick. But then, yeah, you definitely can tell a difference in your energy, your motivation, your desire to be around people also shifts, like your socialization also shifts as your hormone shifts. So how, like you mentioned before, like understanding your superpowers of each cycle, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so this is, I love to categorize it. Like, I love to lean into the different, like I said, superpowers of the cycle. So, a lot of people will just feel like that time that they're on their periods, that PMS or luteal time is, a lot of people really just they like to almost dismiss it as a bad like part of their cycle. Like they just don't enjoy that time. But if you can lean into and understand why you're feeling that way during that time of your cycle, you can actually kind of look at it more of a little bit like I like to look at it more of like a retreat time. Like you can really, give yourself the permission to care for yourself, have a little bit of chocolate, have a bubble bath or have a, Epsom salt bath, put your feet up and read for a little bit. I mean, I know we live in a society that we can't completely slow down for that last week of our cycle typically, but we can build these things in. So some of the superpowers, we'll start with ovulation because you were just speaking about that. And like I said, during ovulation, we tend to be a little bit more energetic, more outgoing. This is a really, really great time to be doing things like presentations, if you can line that up. So especially if you're self-employed, or you can just arrange things with your schedule that way. Presentations, social events, it's a really great time for that. Again, we just have more energy. It's a great time if you want to push yourself a little bit harder, maybe in the gym or with an activity that you like to do. We just have more get up and go during this time. And then moving into that luteal phase, this is when we kind of want to be a little bit more nesty as we move towards the period. And during this time, this is a really great time for finishing up tasks, for organization, like checking things off the list. This is a really great time if you want to organize your house or organize your inbox or your Dropbox folders, anything like that.
The things we've been putting off all month long.
Yes, yeah, and we tend to feel more called to finish these things up during this time. It's kind of like that fall, like again, that fall harvest time. Like let's gather in, let's, get ready for the winter that's coming. So I actually really like for women or even like for older girls, like girls who are teens and they're maybe doing a little bit more food prep themselves. This is a really great time to prep ahead some healthy food so that when you are on your period, you don't necessarily feel, and maybe you don't feel like making healthy meals as much. You can have those things stashed away in the freezer or ready to go. So that's one of my favorite tips to give women, but especially older teens as well, if they're living on their own or they're doing more meal prep for themselves. So yeah, that's a time, yeah, again, organizing, just kind of those administrative tasks are really great during that time. During the period, so during that menstrual phase, we tend to be really introspective. So a lot of women will feel like, more moody, but it tends to be things that show up that are really bothering us anyway, that we just haven't addressed. So if you find that you're getting a little bit emotional or moody, quote unquote moody, about the same things every month, maybe it's time to look at that, maybe do some journaling on it, take a little bit of a deeper dive. Maybe it's time to have a conversation about something that's bothering you with your partner, your brother, your sister, your spouse, whoever it is that, maybe something's coming up with, or, maybe it's something about work that keeps coming up on the same time. Like maybe it's time to maybe make a change at that point. So again, we tend to be more introspective during this time, and we are naturally a little bit more withdrawn during this time. So you might want to spend a little bit more time just on your own doing things like self-care things, journaling, whatever that is for you, and just taking a little bit more time for yourself to recharge. During the follicular phase, so after menstruation, this is when our energy is starting to come back up. A lot of women will feel kind of around that day 3 of their period, day 3 to 4, they'll feel like all of a sudden they're plugged back in. Like life is ready, you're ready to tackle things again. And a nice time to start building back up with a little bit more intensity. If you are working out, you're starting to feel a little bit more outward. So it's a good time to start planning different activities, start arranging things with people, arranging things for your work activities, things like that. So we do start to feel a little bit more sharp again during that follicular phase as the hormones start to come back online. So that's kind of a basic overview of some of the, I like to call them superpowers. And I really feel like when we can lean into those and we know what's shifting with our hormones that way, we give ourselves a lot more grace to not be on performing the same way every day throughout the month, because we do really have those shifts that happen weekly.
Yes. When I started to learn about this and really understand the different phases, what my hormones were actually doing and leaning into it a little bit more, it was like such a sense of relief of like, hey, I don't need to force myself to be social during my luteal phase or a couple days before my period. And yeah, I am going to feel a lot more social, like follicular phase leading up to ovulation. It's a great time to schedule my podcast interviews, take control of my schedule, and like plan more social outings during those time. I also used to really despise my luteal phase. Oh, I hated it because I didn't understand it. Because I didn't understand what was actually happening with my hormones, and I was dealing with a little bit of a hormonal imbalance. But when I leaned into learning and actually slowing down, which is a really hard thing for a lot of women, and I leaned into like, hey, finishing all these to do things on my list. I had this drive to like complete all the tasks that I had started earlier that month.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think it's as a recovering type A person, I would have that same problem. I would absolutely hate that I felt like I needed more rest. I remember feeling like on the weekends, I would want to sleep in a little bit, like maybe an extra hour compared to usual. And I would feel so guilty because I'm like, oh, I'm missing the day. There's so much I wanted to get done. Now that I know I actually need a little bit more rest, I need a bit more downtime. It's like, oh, okay. I get to sleep in this weekend. I get to have a little bit more rest time. I get to put my feet up in the afternoon when I'm finished my work, and instead of being go 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 and productive all the time.
Yeah. So one thing that you had mentioned was like an app. Sometimes an app will tell us like where we're at in our cycle. And what ways is that accurate or beneficial? And what ways is it maybe not showing us the whole picture?
So I do love that a lot of women are using apps to track their cycle, because at least they are tracking somewhat. They are seeing when they're bleeding, maybe they're tracking their symptoms, things like that. But the apps are based on an algorithm. And depending on how sensitive the app is, it might shift its algorithm a bit based on your previous periods, the longer you've had the app. But it's not specific to your biology. It's not showing what's going on in your underwear. As far as cervical discharge goes, it's not showing when that actual egg is being released from your ovaries. So that can be affected by so many things. It can be affected by stress. It can be affected by nutrition, by travel, hormonal imbalances. There are so many things that can affect when we ovulate. So if we're looking at our app and it's giving a basic like 28-day cycle prediction, which not every woman has a 28-day cycle, and especially during the teen years, that can be a little bit more sporadic too, as ovulation's really just starting to come online and our body's getting used to ovulating. So trusting that the app is telling us, your ovulation is happening right now, so that's your fertile window. So it's actually really good to know this, because this is when potential pregnancy could occur. And it's also going to be predictive of your period. So typically after we ovulate, we will have a 2-week period of time and then we'll start to menstruate. So again, that ovulation window can really change a lot depending on what's going on. So as much as I do like apps, I do think that we should be tracking other signs that our body's giving us as well. So if you really want to be accurate about when you're ovulating, tracking things like watching for your cervical mucus and how that changes throughout your cycle. You can track different things like your body temperature. Basal body temperature is a big one that I'll have a lot of my clients start to track. It shifts throughout. So once you ovulate, your temperature will go up slightly. So basal body temperature, I'll just explain that briefly because a lot of people don't know what that means. It's taking your temperature first thing in the morning before you've done anything. So you haven't gotten up to go to the bathroom or anything like that. You just basically roll over and put the thermometer under your tongue and take your temperature. So it will change ever so slightly after ovulation. So once we see that consistent rise in temperature, we know we've ovulated. So that's another way to track. There are some amazing apps now that correlate with a thermometer. So there's one that I actually recommend a lot for teens called Tina, which is fantastic, and it has its own app. It's very youth friendly. So it's got a lot of great information within the app itself and, lots of fun colors and things like that too. So I do love that. There's also other ways to do that. So you can wear an armband called Temp Drop if maybe have an inconsistent wake up time or you're, being woken up by young children, things like that. So there are different ways to track your basal body temperature, but that, as far as I'm concerned, is the most important one to track to know when you're actually ovulating. But that, along with cervical mucus, you can track your cervical position as well. That can be a little bit more tricky for some women, but yeah, so the apps are great, but they're not a really accurate prediction of when you're ovulating. So I do think it's great to track those body biomarkers as well.
Yes, I agree. I ask my clients all the time, like, are you ovulating? And they're like, what do you mean? How do I know if I'm ovulating? And like, well, we need to start tracking that. And another thing that like I use is my Aura Ring. The Aura Ring is fairly good too. It is taking your temperature overnight. And I do use my Aura Ring and I also take my basal body temperature in the morning because I just really like data. And it's not that hard. The alarm goes off. I just grab the thermometer, throw it in my mouth, use an app to track it. I like Read Your Body and plotting my temperatures on a graph. And you can see the shift of your temperature and know that you ovulated, which is so important. Can you talk a little bit more? Because you mentioned it a couple times, cervical mucus changes. What are we looking for when we're talking about cervical mucus changes?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to see a bit of a change. So we tend to see that things are a bit drier right after the period. So you might not see much in your underwear or when you wipe. And this can change throughout. I find for younger girls, they will see it in their underwear. And typically, this is something that will start about 6 months before they start their first period, is they'll start to see this coming on. They'll start to see this in their underwear or when they wipe as well. So when they go to the bathroom and they wipe, they'll see maybe a little bit on the toilet paper. As you get closer to your perimenopausal years, you might not see it as much in your underwear. Some women do, but some women is a little bit more discreet when we might not be producing the same amount. But cervical mucus discharge basically happens in and around that ovulation window. And it's a fluid that we produce, and it can either help the sperm to reach the egg, like by providing like a bit of a medium, or as it gets a bit thicker, it will block as well. It will block the cervix so that no more sperm can get up. So that's why it's produced typically. It's got a lot of different nutrients and things in it as well. But it will start out a little bit, you'll start to see it maybe a little bit drier, a little bit more tacky, and then it'll get the peak time of ovulation. It will get a little bit more kind of liquid stretchy, almost like slippery, kind of like egg white texture, like raw egg white texture. And then it'll dry up a bit more again. And then usually until the period, it'll be quite dry again. So that period of time, and it can last, several days, that you'll have different changes throughout, but it'll start a little bit more pasty, and then you'll have a little bit more of that stretchy, slippery, and then it'll typically start to dry up a bit again.
Yes, I know that like for women and through perimenopause too, it can be a little bit, like you said, a little bit more discreet and a little bit more challenging to detect, like, hey, am I having these changes with my cervical mucus? But I will tell you, every month I'm like, yes, it's here. I'm still like, it's still happening, right? Like, it's because ovulation is so important. So we talked about birth control pill and how you were started on the birth control pretty early because you had all of these debilitating symptoms and like skip periods and things like that. Let's talk a little bit more about the ways that the birth control pill works, how it's affecting your menstrual cycle, and how that maybe is disconnecting somebody from their cycle or their body.
Absolutely. Yeah. I talk to so many women or even girls, and they think that they're having a regular, like a really regular period because they're on the pill. And it's actually not a period, because to have an actual period, you do have to ovulate. Otherwise, it's just basically, we call it a chemical withdrawal bleed when we're on the pill or any kind of hormonal contraceptive. And so you'll notice that, like on the pill, you either stop taking it for those 7 days, or it's a placebo pill that happens during that time. So that will trigger a bleed. So it's just so that the uterine lining doesn't build up too much. So basically what the birth control pill does, it gives you synthetic progesterone or progestin, which is telling your body, and it's on a continuous basis. So it's going to tell your body that you're pregnant, basically. It's going to kind of give the brain signals that you're pregnant. So you're not going to ovulate. It's going to shut down ovulation, and you're not going to be ovulating anymore. So you don't have any of these cyclical changes typically through having hormonal birth control. So women can get quite disconnected from their cycle. I mean, again, sometimes it's something that we need to use for a period of time. If those symptoms are absolutely debilitating, there are so many other things that we can do to help with these symptoms to get our cycles back online properly. But if somebody needs to take that temporarily because they just can't function, then just know that you are not actually having a proper period, and it is shutting down ovulation in the body. And we do know that ovulation is just so important for laying down those hormones, for helping with bone growth. I like to say it's like putting a little deposit in our health bank account every month by having an ovulation. So if we are shutting that down, there's really a disconnect between the brain and the ovaries. So we're really putting a pause on that connection. So often women will go off the pill and wonder why, their periods are not back, because that whole connection has been shut down, and it can take a long time sometimes for it to come back online for some women. Also, a lot of women will find that when they do come off the pill, it's really just been masking the symptoms that they've had because it's shut down the cycle. So where they might feel like they're better, like their cramps are better, their skin might be better. Sometimes these things can get worse, like sometimes skin can get worse for women on the pill as well. But they might feel like things are all good, and then they come off the pill and their symptoms come back with a vengeance because things have really been brewing beneath the surface that whole time. It's just been masked. So it really does pay to get to the root cause of what's going on if you are going on the pill for period pain or any types of symptoms. It pays to get to the root versus just bandaging it. If we are using the pill for actual birth control purposes, then, it has its time and place. But really knowing what it's doing in the body is something that I think is so important, instead of just taking it blindly.
Hey, Healthy Buzz listeners! Are you feeling like you're constantly struggling to hit your protein goals? Like you should be getting more protein for energy, muscle support, and overall well-being, but you're not quite for sure how to make that happen without sacrificing flavor or other important nutrients. I get it. That's why I created the High Protein Power Plan, a delicious and easy to follow 7-day meal plan designed specifically for women who want to effortlessly reach 130 grams of protein or more every single day. Now, this isn't about bland chicken and broccoli. Inside, you're going to find mouth-watering recipes packed with flavor and designed to perfectly balance your macros. Think vibrant salads with protein powerhouses, satisfying bowls packed with flavor and nutrients, and easy dinner ideas that make hitting your goals a breeze without feeling deprived. This plan takes the stress out of high-protein eating and helps you feel your absolute best. Ready to finally unlock the power of high protein without the guesswork? Head on over to bcw.becollectivewellness.com/high protein recipes to download your high protein power plan today. That's bcw.becollectivewellness.com/high protein recipes. It's time to nourish your body, feel amazing, and discover how delicious hitting your protein goals truly can be. Let's say that somebody is using hormonal birth control as a teen for pregnancy prevention, because a lot of times people will be like, oh, the last thing we need is a teen pregnancy, and 100% agree. So how are we navigating through that for, let's say, empowering girls with these choices and understanding a little bit more about their body? How can they advocate for themselves?
So that's a really great question because it is something that comes up a lot. And I find it comes up in my work as well, especially with the older groups that I'll work with. And with the moms, they'll be like, well, what am I going to do when my daughter actually is starting to be sexually active? Like, this is not, I don't discuss this with the tweens at all. Like, we don't get into talking about sex or pregnancy prevention. We just talk about the basics of the cycle and what their body's doing. But those older groups, it is really important because it is something that comes up. And again, 100% agree with you there. We don't want to have a teen pregnancy, an unwanted teen pregnancy, but having the girls understand that, okay, this is what's happening. If this is the choice, this is what we decide to use. And there are cases that it is maybe the only choice available or the best choice available. This is how we can support your body. These are the nutrients that it depletes. So these are the things that we can do about, maybe taking some extra supplements or, tweaking your diet a little bit. If these symptoms pop up, this could be because of the pill. And this is maybe we need to look into a different type for you, or just knowing what's happening and what, like, okay, we need to support your bones. Because this was something that came up for me. My bone density was, I basically had osteoporosis in my 20s from being on the pill for so long and having that whole cycle shut down through my teen years when I was still laying down bone. So just having the girls know that, okay, these are the things that can come up if you're on the pill. This is what's happening in your body. So maybe we don't want to do this long term, but here's what we can do to help mitigate some of these things. And also having them realize that it is not the only choice out there. So there's a lot of talk about STIs and, sexually transmitted diseases, things like that. Well, the pill doesn't protect against any of those. The only things that protect against that is a barrier method. So do we maybe want to look into using menstrual cycle awareness, tracking your cycle with using a barrier method? Because really teens should be using a barrier method anyway, I would say. I think that's quite important. So knowing that there are options, and this is why I really like to teach girls at a young age, like even before they start their periods, but especially once they start their periods initially, about tracking their cycles so that they have the option to go back and look through their charts to really know what's happening in their own bodies, to be empowered if they decide that, okay, the pill's not for me. I don't really want to deal with these side effects, the potential side effects, that they can use tracking their cycle with a barrier method and still have really, really effective contraception.
Yeah, absolutely. And not always just the female's responsibility for contraceptive protection. We have to like really shift that narrative of like it's not just us taking a pill or having an IUD that means, like the partner is also responsible, and condoms are very effective at any age, not just for teens, any and every age.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's something, again, so parents can talk to their kids about, like, if you're with a partner who is putting all this responsibility on you, maybe you want to question, is this the right relationship for me? So again, just having these conversations from an early age is so empowering on so many different levels. So not just their own body, but their relationships. So I think it's really, really important. And it does, what I found, especially doing the mom and tween classes, is that it really opens up that communication. So yeah, they're learning a lot. They're learning great stuff from the class and it's lots of fun and they're learning about their bodies and mom's learning and daughter's learning, but it's the conversations that happen after, because I do give a little bit of homework every week. It's like kind of opening up the different discussions. It's the conversations that happen after that really create ongoing communication for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, we're destigmatizing periods. Everybody, not everybody, but most women have a period. So it's part of our life. It's a natural process that somewhere along the line, somebody got an ick about it and decided that we needed to make it be this big secret that we can't talk about. And so I love that you're opening those doors for more conversations. I remember as a teen, so I shared in my episode that like I didn't have the open conversations with family. And I remember one time like watching, as a family, we were watching Roseanne, and one of the girls on there was talking about getting her period. And I was like, Mom, what's a period? And she told my dad to change the channel. So that was
Oh
the end of the conversation.
no. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's actually for so many of us, especially our generation, that's what it was. It wasn't for me. I was fortunate. I don't remember having a lot of open conversation about it, but it wasn't shunned. It was something that was we could discuss. But I do think for so many women of our age, and then we carry that through and we're not able to communicate that properly to the next generation and we feel uncomfortable about it. We still are carrying, even if we've embraced our cycle a little bit more, we still carry a little bit of that stigma. It's quite pervasive in our culture. And I do see a lot more openness about it now with the younger generation. And like especially, all the new period products that have come out over the years and things like that. There's a lot more talk, even on social media, about it. Like I actually just saw, I was looking at something this morning and there was a picture posted from a girl who had taken her menstrual disc out and the blood was all along the menstrual blood was all along the writing that was on the cup. And she's like, I thought this looked so cool and badass. So I had to take a picture of it. And I was like, oh, that's really, yeah,
Right?
yeah. When we may have not seen, we wouldn't have seen that when we were young.
Oh, no.
But so I do think it is changing, but I also still think that there's a lot of work to be done and that we can really empower our girls to not only realize that it's normal and a healthy part of our lives, but to really embrace it and to also know what is normal with a period and what is not. When should they be seeking out help or advice? They shouldn't be settling for having painful periods all the time or a lot of monthly symptoms because it's not necessary for the most part. Some people do have conditions that they might have a bit more, but there's usually so much that we can do to get to the root cause so that you're not suffering. You're just having those normal ebbs and flows instead of extreme mood swings or extreme cramps. Like you might just feel like, oh, my period's starting because I can feel a couple twinges. And it's just more of a signal from your body rather than extreme pain. Like I like to call the symptoms messengers. They're telling us that something has gone a little bit awry in the body that we need to address it.
Absolutely. So one thing that you mentioned earlier was like the kind of inconsistency around timing that tweens can have with their period. Can you talk a little bit more about that and when, for maybe a parent, is it time to explore something more from a medical standpoint when it comes to those missing cycles?
So some teens will start their period and they will be regular from the get-go, but often that's not the case. So puberty is it's a life stage, just like perimenopause is a life stage. Puberty can take a good 6 to 10 years from like the beginning when they first start to maybe have some breast buds, maybe develop a little bit of pubic hair, different changes like that in the body to the time that their periods are actually regular. So usually within that first, I would say 2 to 3 years of menarche or starting that first period, they will sometimes have some inconsistency. They might have some anovulatory cycles. So the cycles that they don't ovulate if they're tracking their ovulation. They might have cycles that are a little bit longer or shorter. But, if we start to see more than maybe two skipped periods, after the period has initially started, we might want to look into what's going on. So maybe have some medical investigation into that. If we're having a lot of inconsistent ovulation, so I would say after about 2 years, if you're starting to see a lot of inconsistent ovulation or still seeing a lot of inconsistent, then we might want to look into what's going on as well. And after kind of that 2 to 3 year mark, if things haven't regulated, to a somewhat consistent or mostly consistent cycle, then we want to start investigating. If they haven't started their period by about age 16, we want to start maybe questioning and looking into things as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of factors that go into like the body actually having that first period. There's a lot of stuff that is, like you said, like 6 months before, somebody could start noticing cervical mucus in their underwear, and they're like, "What is this?" Right? Like the body is preparing, and it has to meet these certain
quote unquote criteria in order to have that first period. And then we have to think about maintaining really healthy cycles. There are a lot of things, including nutrient status. Something that we can see a lot happen with the teens is maybe a little bit of some different or disordered eating patterns pop up. And if you're under eating, that can definitely affect your menstrual cycle and it can go missing. And that shouldn't be happening. If you're, like you said, if you're going like 3 months without a period, okay, maybe it's time to investigate what's happening here.
Absolutely. Yeah, we see that come up a lot with teens. Yes, disordered eating, but also teens that are really, really active. So it might be
Yeah.
kind of almost disordered eating, or I don't know if I would categorize it the same way, but it disguises almost like a disordered eating because they're not getting the adequate calories, adequate nutrients that they need to maintain that activity level. So we do see that a lot with especially competitive athletes in their teen years, their periods will go missing. And that this is really, really important that we address this because, again, they're still growing. Even if they've had their main growth spurt, they are still laying down that bone. They're still building strength. They're building muscle. So it's really important that they have those adequate nutrients to maintain that consistent menstrual cycle. So absolutely, yeah, we want to be watching for that as well, especially, yeah, like you said, if there's any disordered eating. So watching for that as a parent that maybe, if you're noticing that they're cutting back on their meals or not eating. It's hard sometimes with teens because they're not always eating at home, but just, yeah, monitoring that a little bit more and seeing what's going on with the cycle and really explaining the importance of that to them, that it is really important to keep up with these nutrients because this is really important for our general overall health. It's not just the way we look. And this can be really hard, I know, with teens, but it is really important to keep up with that to maintain those adequate nutrients and calories that our bodies need.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to also to the conversation that we had earlier. Let's say that somebody's practitioner then says, well, we're going to put you on birth control pill to regulate your period. As Mandy discussed earlier, that's not actually regulating your period. We're kind of shutting down that whole communication between the ovaries and the pituitary of like creating hormones because it's getting synthetic hormones from an outside source. So the body doesn't need to create them. So it's not actually regulating your period. It's just masking a problem. No, it's just a band-aid approach.
Absolutely. And those synthetic hormones, a lot of women will say, well, I'm fine. I've got progesterone from the pill. It's not progesterone, it's progestin. And progestin is what we often will see those side effects with. It's not the progesterone we want. That progesterone is our keep calm, carry on hormone. It's just the hormone that makes us feel relaxed. It helps us feel stable, helps to stabilize our moods. But progestin can often have the opposite effect on women, and it can cause that weight gain, the unwanted weight gain, and it can cause all kinds of digestive symptoms for women as well. I know that was something for me. My digestive system was a mess. And it took a lot of work to heal that after coming off the pill and acne medication and all of the things that were going hand in hand with for my situation. So yeah, absolutely. Just knowing, again, it's that awareness, that knowing that this pill, yeah, might be the best choice for me right now, but what's it going to do to my body and what can I do to help curb some of these things that are happening?
Yes, absolutely. What would you say are some key nutritional and lifestyle strategies that you teach teens and tweens to help them with managing a lot of symptoms that they could be experiencing with their period?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, it's really a whole lifestyle, like a full holistic approach. And, with the younger girls, they don't always have control over everything that's going on in their house. So I teach them little bits here and there, but we talk about things like managing your emotions and stress, of course, because we know that a lot of the younger and younger kids are having so much more stress in school. Like there's a lot of pressure to do all the activities, to keep up with their schoolwork, to, as they get older, to get into the right university, things like that. So, a lot of pressure on kids in general. So I actually bring in a technique called EFT tapping, or emotional freedom technique. Something that I was finding really helpful myself, and I decided to become certified in because it was just such a beautiful technique. And I love this for girls because it's quick and it's easy, and they can go into the bathroom and they can tap. I'm not sure if you're familiar with tapping, Brandy, but it's
Mhm.
definitely becoming a lot more mainstream. Once they know how to do this, they can go into the bathroom stall and they can do a little bit of tapping at school, and they can help to calm themselves down immediately. So this is definitely a technique. And I teach them about other techniques as well for dealing with stress and emotions. Like we talk about journaling, we talk about, having those activities that they like to do. So maybe it's finding a special spot to set up their little nest to read or to do some art. So we talk about all those different things. We talk about nutrition a lot because, my background is a holistic nutritionist. We do talk about things like getting enough protein in, the good food choices that they want to make, and not necessarily, I really don't want to approach it in a way that they're feeling bad for wanting to eat more, to have some of the quote unquote junk foods, things like that. But when we give our bodies the proper nutrients to begin with, then we're going to crowd out some of those anyway. So, like, hey, you are going to actually need a little bit more fuel during your luteal phase because our bodies really do. So we need about an extra 300 calories a day during that time. So, you know what? Have a nice piece of dark chocolate, or have, like, I teach them some recipes that they can make with their moms so that they can make like healthier snacks that are really tasty. So I have a whole recipe book that goes along with that work as well. And yeah, just like letting them know that, like, hey, you want to fuel your body well first thing in the morning, and that's just going to help you set up for the rest of the day. And just getting those colorful fruits and vegetables in for fiber. Yeah, all of these different things. So yeah, there's lots that we talk about when it comes to getting those nutrients in. So yeah, those like healthy balanced meals throughout the day, healthier snack options, all of those things. Yeah.
Not skipping meals.
Not skipping meals, how important it is to, yeah, meal timing and getting those regular meals in throughout the day. So, especially the younger ones, moms need to be on board with this as well. Like if you want your daughter's mood to be stable as she goes through this, like making sure she's got access to, a good meal to take with her to school, some snacks, she's having a really good breakfast in the morning. So maybe coming up with some fun things together that she really likes. Like I know my daughter, she's 15, but she loves her protein waffles every morning. And so we're getting those in, and, different things that maybe they can get on board helping with as well. And then they get a little bit more vested into that. So instead of you just like throwing something on the table in front of them, let's choose a few things together that you really like. Yeah, and then you can help me with it, or I'll prepare these for you or whatever. And as they get a little bit older, again, we lose a little bit more control as parents when they get a bit older, but at least making sure that they know the importance and you're providing them with those building blocks. And then also explaining to them too when they feel like, oh, yeah, did you have cramps this month? Well, what were did you do anything differently? Like, were you having a chocolate bar or can of pop every day when you were at school? Well, maybe let's try not doing that for this month. Let's try an experiment and see if you feel better if you don't do that. Or maybe if it's something like their moods are all over the place, you find that they're really snappy with you, or they're crying or things like that around their period. Well, did you eat today? Like, did you have a good lunch? Did you take time to do that? Did you have a snack after school? Did you eat something before your soccer game or your basketball game? Like, so just being aware and like connecting those dots for them until they can do it, until they learn to do it themselves.
Yeah. I think a big thing is like the moms also have to recognize their own relationship with food, maybe what they need to work on when it comes to how they talk about themselves, how they talk about food, how they feel their bodies, how they talk about their periods. It's definitely going to have an impact on how their daughters also talk about their bodies, how they feel their body, how they talk about their periods. So it's a process for everybody.
Absolutely. It can be a big awakening for the moms too, to really see, to really pinpoint like, oh, I talk about how I hate my period, or I talk about like, how I hate my body, or, I need to cut back on eating this or that. And really, it does start even when they're older. They are still watching us and they're still mirroring a lot of that as much as they, are trying to differentiate themselves at this stage. they're still watching and they're still paying attention to our cues and what we're doing. So that is one of the first things. I had that question recently, like, how can I start talking to my daughter about her period? What are some of the ways that I can do this? And I said, well, the first step is you need to kind of look at your own relationship with your cycle and look at healing that. And we haven't all had a great relationship with our cycles. Sometimes, a lot of women have dealt with a lot of painful periods or endometriosis, PCOS, different conditions that maybe they've suffered a lot with their periods. But really trying to heal that relationship as much as you can so that you can bring that forward into your relationship with your daughter or her relationship with her periods. So we typically want better for them than what we had ourselves.
Absolutely. That is so imperative to this whole process. If we want something to be better, we also have to look at the little self-reflection here. What do I need to work on as well first?
Yes, it's a lot of self-reflection sometimes.
Well, Mandy, this was such a wonderful conversation. I'm sure everybody is going to walk away feeling a little bit more empowered about their period and knowing more information about their period. You do have a freebie for our listeners. Can you let us know what that freebie is?
Yes, absolutely. So I had a really great comprehensive cyclical living guide for women, but what I realized it was a little bit maybe sciencey, a little bit in depth for the younger girls, and I really want them to get these concepts as well. So I revamped this especially for teens and tweens. So it's simplified, it's really quite basic, but it's really beautiful and it ties our different phases into the different seasons as well. So how we really as women connect to the natural cycles of the earth as well. So it's really beautiful, just really simple to follow. So it's cyclical living for tweens and teens.
Amazing. So where can people find you? How can they follow you? And how can they learn more about your Empowered Girl Mom and Tween Menstrual Cycle Education Program?
Yes, so the best place to follow me is Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and that's where I tend to show up the most consistently. As you know, Brandy, it's hard to show up in all the places all the time.
Right.
I do have a website as well at mandyleblanc.com. So very simple. And there is a really great rundown of my Empowered Girl program on there. And if you do pick up that Cyclical Living for Teens freebie, I will make sure that you know when the next cohort's happening. I will be running it again in the fall. I tend to run it a couple times a year as the group program. But if you do have specific questions about your own cycle, your teen or tweens development as well, you can always reach out to me on Instagram and ask me questions there.
Amazing. Well, everybody go give her a follow, check out her freebie and all the beautiful content that she provides on Instagram. Thanks so much, Mandy.
Thank you so much for having me, Brandy. It was really great chatting with you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Healthy Buzz. I hope this conversation has left you feeling seen, supported, and ready to take the next step in your health journey. Love what you heard? Make sure you subscribe to Healthy Buzz so you never miss an honest conversation. And if you found this valuable, please take a moment to leave a review. I truly appreciate it. For exclusive weekly tips and holistic strategies, be sure to subscribe to my weekly newsletter. The link is in the show notes. Remember, this isn't just nutrition, it's permission to trust your body. I'll catch you on the next episode of Healthy Buzz.